Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the World's Okayest Mountain Bike Podcast. And as of right now, it's just me, your host, Clinton Sylvie, and co-host Ryan Brown. We are hopeful that Kyle will be joining us at some point, but we think he might have just got taken away from us by a work phone call. So he might be back, he might not, but he warned me that that was probably going to be the case today. And we seize the day. We seize the opportunities when they are here for us to talk. And I just remembered, Ryan, it's just been a couple weeks, and the man who actually suggested this topic has already purchased a bike. But I do have two topics, and then potentially, lastly, we'll get into our Christmas wish list.
Nice.
But did you know that the designers of suspension, when they put in valving for compression damping in high speed and low speed, that they actually put that in there to be used? Did you know this, Ryan?
Well, given my suspension theory that was thrown out the window earlier this year, which we discussed on a podcast, I probably did not know this.
Yeah, you were kind of opposite of what I'm about to say, but I guess it might be different from brand to brand and how the damping circuits are made. But I found out this past weekend at Shepherd Mountain that the high-speed compression circuit is, in fact, important and useful on your fork. And I'm pretty angry about it because I just realized that my fork, even though I really liked it and thought it was great before, could have actually been much better this whole time. I've wasted this whole time. So here's what happened. I was at Shepherd. I run a Manitou Mezzer Pro Enduro fork. It's a 170 millimeter travel. You can adjust it internally. You don't have to buy a different air spring. You can adjust it internally anywhere from like 140 to 180. It's a really cool fork. It has the reverse arch. It's plenty stiff. It's just as stiff as the 38 mil Zebs and Fox. And instead of using tokens to change the air spring, it has a separate air chamber called the IRT, and that's sort of how it basically does the job of tokens, but it's a little smoother. It doesn't feel like it ramps up as much. It also has, it's not adjustable, but it does have hydraulic bottom out resistance at the bottom like the new RockShox shocks do. Manitou was already doing this in their fork. RockShox and Fox do not. So even when you bottom this fork out, it's not harsh. I've only ever felt it bottom out one time ever. Anyway, I was riding at Shepherd today, and I pretty well run the high speed wide open because I have enough air and ramp up chamber air that I don't bottom out much, and it's not really a problem. So I thought, I'll just run the high speed open for all those square edge rocks and this and that. And what ended up happening was I decided, you know what, let's just test it. I'm not going to change anything else. There's 4 clicks of high speed, and I had it all the way open. So I went in 3. So I could have went all the way clockwise and back 1 just to see what happens. And I'm expecting it's going to be harsh. My traction is going to go away, blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling you immediately from the first rock garden that I have ridden 300 times, it's like the trail disappeared and my hands didn't even feel anything. And so I carried on down mine shaft, and I'm almost angry because it feels so good. It feels better on the little bumps, and then I know it's going to feel better on the big landings because there's more resistance, stiffer. And I even turned it all the way clockwise, and I could be very happy with it all the way clockwise. I think it was a little bit. I ended up back out to just 1 click. But I absolutely could not believe how much better it felt, because I guess the reason is it was keeping everything up higher in the stroke. and keeping in the top part of the fork where it's more supple, not riding as deep into the stroke, which I thought that was all low speed. I thought low speed's the only thing that keeps you from getting deeper in the stroke or whatever, but I was wrong, completely wrong. And now I feel like I have wasted almost a year on this bike by not using the adjustments that they build into the fork for a reason. Because how many of us have had a fork or whatever, or a shock, and we just basically open everything wide open, and because we think that's what's going to feel the best and be the most plush, and basically only use the air to make adjustments. But now, Ryan, I know you had an opposite issue on low speed with yours, but
yeah, but I think, like, in theory, thinking about it more, which I probably should have just thought about my suspension more when I had my issue a couple months back. But I think in theory, if you think about it, now the way you explain it is when you're hitting those high speed stuff and you haven't ridden as much, let's say, shepherd type riding as you have cross country for the majority of this year. But it's a little different when you think high speed on like a cross country bike versus maybe your bike you're riding at shepherd. The terrain's steeper, it's rougher, the hits are bigger. So you're going to have more of those high speed hits. And by running it all the way open, what you were doing essentially, let's say the travel's 4 inches, right? I'm just going to use a good round number. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to use 4 and I'm going to use inches because we're in America and that's the way we do things. But if you're running that thing all the way open, when you hit that, let's just say sharp edge or a big hit, let's just say it's starting already at 2 inches in. And I'm, again, round numbers, it's probably not that drastic, but it's not holding up as much at the initial part of the stroke. So essentially what you've done is through that stroke, you've eliminated the first half of it by having it so open, right? I'm just, this is what my brain's thinking. I'm not saying I'm right, and I'd love to talk to a suspension guru on this, but in theory, and I'm also kind of thinking on dirt bikes, like, yes, it's in your head, you're saying, well, I want it open because I don't want it stiff. But that's chamber, that setting is designed for those high speed, hard hits. You do want it to start out stiff because you don't want to sacrifice half the travel before you even really start the travel, if that makes sense. Am I right?
No, you're absolutely right. And this was inspired. I was watching one of the videos of that Jordy Coates, I think is his name. He makes a lot of YouTube videos with Fox where he's talking about suspension, and he suggested this to people, saying that one mistake people make is they run everything wide open and it's there for a reason. So it was much, much, much better. Now my dad has just appeared here at my desk. Everybody, we're recording podcast, Dad. Now, some of you, if you were at the Steelville race, you probably saw him running around on his e-bike. They won't see you, Dad, because I don't run the video, but Kyle and Ryan can see you.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Kelly.
Now,
you bicycle boys, I don't know.
well, since you're here, Dad, when we were at Steelville, you were threatening to start racing your e-bike in the e-bike class.
I know.
So what, are we going to see you in 2025 at a race signed up, or what? It'd be a great way to celebrate your 70th birthday.
If I sign up, that'd be an accomplishment.
I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to hear you that
signed up. You know, what I figure is I can't do no worse than maybe these guys might do, come at last or something. I don't know.
Well, if it's an enduro, you would probably beat Ryan if he came out of retirement, because he's going to crash and break something, no doubt. But if I could convince, we could try to convince the race promoter to do a 70 plus class.
Now we're
and then you're going to win.
Chance.
Then you're going to win.
Yeah.
Man.
Ryan, Kyle, we were just discussing before you got on what I was telling you on the phone about having my suspension, actually using the damping circuits and how much better.
I was going to say, between you and Ryan, you guys are having some epiphanies the end of this season about how your suspension forks work that you've been using for a decade now.
You know what's weird is when I race dirt bikes, I was neurotic about my suspension setup. Like I was one of those guys. Mountain bikes, I've never paid attention to it. Like, oh, it's leaking. Okay, just get the seals replaced and new oil. I've never even one time like gone and messed with suspension settings. So it's kind of weird. Maybe it's because all that time running my brain crazy on dirt bikes for so many years. I'm like, I don't even care. I just want to ride my bike.
Well, and that might have been because of the way you entered the sport, right? So like mountain biking eventually just became a cross training tool for you, or started as a cross training tool for you for dirt bike racing. So like for you, maybe it was always that mountain biking came to you as a secondary thing to promote your first thing. So like when you went to go mountain biking, you're like, I don't want to mess with any of this. I just need to go get my laps in and get my hours in and get my fitness up. I'll focus all my time and energy on making sure the dirt bike runs. And is perfect, and then the mountain bike it's just a training tool. It is what it is, and maybe it just stuck that way.
No, not really, because I was pretty much done racing dirt bikes when I started mountain biking. I was road biking for fitness, but
okay,
when I started mountain biking, I started because I broke my femur and I was like, I'm done with this thing. So and then I started mountain biking because it was somewhat similar. But I was pretty well done with dirt bikes at that point. But I don't know. I think it was just more like I had for so many years, like every week, like, oh, like go to a race and like, oh, I need to adjust suspension here or that, like probably over the top with it for sure. And I was like, I just don't even want to care about it. Kind of like I don't care about tires, you know? Anyway.
We just went silent here, boys. What happened? You guys were just rolling, but looks like Ryan's frozen on us.
Well, Clinton, you had the itinerary here, man. We're just along for the ride for this one.
I did, but my dad came in. I'm at my office in town, Clint Sylvie Financial Advisor, Reese Financial Group, by the way. And because of that, I share a building. The building I'm in is actually owned by my family. And so you never know who's going to pop in. So that's why I disappeared for a couple minutes. So anyway, is it time, Ryan, to move on to, we got a listener request just after the Epic, a new listener who I think he lives in St. Louis, I think, but he's known as Colorado Doug. I don't know exactly if he lives in Colorado or if he's there I don't really know. However, another friend of the podcast recommended he listen to us, and apparently he has gone all the way back to the beginning and absolutely loved the How Bro Are You episode, which was episode 3. That was 4.5 years ago, you guys. It's been 4.5 years since we recorded that. I know.
Are you kidding?
Where has the time gone? No,
this was a COVID podcast. This was we're incredibly bored and need to do something.
April of 2020 is when we recorded that. Now, sneak peek listeners, we are going to do a How Bro Are You update, revisit, add some things, maybe take some things away, do a big update. Probably don't have time for that right now, though. So we'll save that one for when we can really lock in and go through it. However, he was wanting to know our opinion on the bike for a guy who has probably ridden mostly cross-country bikes, but wants to start getting into a little bit of jumping, flow trail, general trail riding, but, have a little more fun downhill, not going to come to Shepherd and bomb, but just overall, just good trail bike for someone and something. And he was really focused on jumps, being able to jump. Now, I will tell you, thanks to yours truly, he has already purchased a Giant Trance X. He was considering, he told me, the YT Jeffsy and a Trek Fuel EX, which I told him either one of those would be just fine. He also was considering a YT Izzo, but I'll just tell you right now, the difference from the Izzo to the Jeffsy is a much bigger difference than even from like the Giant Trance to the Trance X, or even the new Trek Top Fuel to the Fuel EX. The Izzo, definitely a little more skittish on the downhills and when the speeds pick up. But here's what I told him, first of all, was basically any big brand bike that's got anywhere from 130 to 150 millimeters of rear travel these days is good. I mean, are we at that point in the bike cycle that they're all just?
I think so.
Like,
no, I think honestly, yeah, and I think that travel range at 130 to 140, like if you're going to have one bike, that's the bike, right? And I think that bike is the Santa Cruz 5010, like 130, 140, lively geometry, modern geometry, playful nature. Like I think that's, if you're going to have one bike, that's the bike, because a set of tires, like 2 sets of tires could make that bike go either way, right? You could do recons or whatever your cross country tire is, and then do minions for bike park days. But I mean, I think that's the one bike that can do it all, with just tire choice back and forth.
That is
and
definitely true.
And I think, I think that's a great choice. You know, Fuel EX is something that popped in my head immediately. I mean, I even think back to when I first started doing enduro. Take out the idea that I crashed a lot, but I don't think that was bike. That was my brain. Like I was riding a 2017 Fuel EX, and it was on the shorter end of travel for that. But depending on I had no problem doing jumps and drops on it. You know, it was a well-spec'd bike. So I think the new Fuel X is probably even more capable of stuff like that. I thought about if you're on a budget, you just want maybe a second bike, and you can't go afford a one bike, $8,000 carbon, like a Status 140 or something is a cool choice.
That's the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that Status 140 is a killer play bike. Same thing. Everything you need, nothing that you don't. Not crazy. And then tires would make or break the experience depending on what you wanted to do. You could cross country race that bike with a set of race tires on it, or you could bike park that bike with a set of tires on it.
And a great value, the Trans X, like you bought.
He got a killer deal on one. He ended up getting one that was carbon frame. It's I think the lowest spec that still has a carbon frame, and got a killer deal on that. And that's kind of what sealed the deal there. But in general on this topic, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
No, I just think we were on the right track with the, the major bike brand names. I think we all three of us are very proponent of a local bike shop just for serviceability and stuff like that. You can buy bikes online, and if you want to figure out how to work on them yourself, that's fine. Or you just, if you're okay with taking it to the bike shop, paying, additional because you didn't buy the bike there, or waiting, whatever, that's fine. But I just enjoy having a bike shop to go to and talk shop and get support from. And I think that's important for a lot of mountain bikers. A lot of people aren't mechanically inclined. So I think that's a big deal.
No, and I think too, man, I still believe that the local bike shop is the heart and soul of the cycling local community. I think local bike shops are supporting race teams. Local bike shops are supporting races, trail advocacy, having parts and having all that. Outside of, even if you can work on your own bike, the existence of local bike shops for the nature and growth of our community and our hobby are so important that supporting your local bike shop is pivotal. And it doesn't mean supporting our shop necessarily if you can or you're unable geography wise. We all ride for Granada. I think Granada is a great local shop, has great offerings, it keeps a lot of good parts and everything around for everybody, but they also do a lot to contribute to the community, and a lot of great bike shops in town do that, promoting race teams, promoting races, supporting things that cyclists and the cycling community do. I mean, that could be anything from donating tools to the Katy Trail, doing trail build days, doing all that stuff. I mean, all that revolves around a lot of the support of a local bike shop. So, I mean, if you can, your local bike shops are worth having, worth keeping, and worth supporting.
So here's the question.
Yeah.
And you two would probably be better qualified to answer this because you both have been in the mountain bike world longer than I have. But when was it that the mountain bike became good, it's plenty good, And because my first full suspension mountain bike was a 2016 Trek Remedy 8. Now, maybe I just have rose-colored glasses because that bike was so meaningful to me as like the first fun to go hit the trails, any terrain, whatever. I ended up putting a little longer air spring in the fork, raced in all my first enduros on that bike. And I remember, I'm thinking back, and other than it was 27.5 front and rear. And I do remember the first time I rode someone's 29er that I realized the 27.5 for me, it almost felt like there was just a little bit of a speed limit when I was sprinting. Like it just felt like at some point I couldn't go faster. And that improved on the 29er. But other than that, like I'm thinking back and that bike was good. Like there was like I had just as much fun on that. It was reliable. It wasn't breaking on me. I didn't have problems with it. I was doing jumps on it. I was having a great time. And the geometry, you know, I look at the geometry of that. Yeah, I guess it was a little steeper than what they are today, but I don't ever remember being, I mean, I was doing some high speed stuff in enduro on that bike. And I don't ever remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so unstable. Like that. And that was a 2016 bike. So
I think you're kind of on the money. Yeah, I think you're kind of on the money there. So like 2016, I believe, is kind of when bikes started being capable of that, right? So like I started riding back when there was free ride, there were free ride bikes, and we called them all mountain bikes. But like all mountain bikes were still pretty beefy, heavy bikes that didn't really pedal well. If I'm being real honest, I think the modernization of downcountry bikes is really the sweetest spot mountain biking has ever been, because the Remedy, you know, even the enduro, you know, back that same generation of enduro from Specialized, like those all bikes had the geometry that modern downcountry bikes have now. 66-degree head tube angles, stuff like that, little longer reach. And I think when the bike industry finally realized that you could implement that kind of geometry into a lightweight, efficient bike, I think right now obviously right now is as good as mountain biking has ever been. There's always been good bikes, but man, like a modern, call it downcountry bike set up with the right tires is a true do-it-all fast bike. And that means do it all, like can race cross country and ride modern mountain bike trails. I think enduro racing is kind of its own little segment, if I'm honest. But like if you want a bike to go ride modern trails and just ride and enjoy mountain biking or race cross country, I think those downcountry bikes, I think that's the sweetest spot it's ever been.
Well, the tire thing.
And I think.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, I think it's because the majority of trails out there are probably downcountry-ish trails. In other words, Shepherd Mountain, yeah, that requires a full-bore enduro bike. But, you know, even if you go down to Bentonville, yeah, there's some trails with some big hits that maybe it takes a 160-plus travel bike. But the majority of the trails, even in Bentonville, let's say, are probably a 140 bike's plenty on. So I think that downcountry bike, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, Kyle, correct me, but I feel like that came about maybe like 2016, 2017, like the real evolution of those, like those came about. Not to say there wasn't some of them out there, but I think everybody kind of jumped on board with that kind of bike geometry and stuff like that.
I'd have to look and see when the Transition Spur came out. Like that was the bike to me. Like when the Transition Spur came out, and it was a 24.5 pound bike that had a 66 or 65.5 degree head tube angle, a long reach, and a 120 travel. Like that was the bike, because now it was a bike and it was tough. It was a strong enough bike that you could ride real trails on, but it kept it lively. And I imagine a Spur with minions, you could ride any, like there's nothing you couldn't go ride and enjoy in Bentonville, like literally nothing. Like the gnarliest stuff, the biggest drops they have out there, you could ride on a Spur. I mean, guys do it on hardtails, you know what I mean? Like it can all be done. Yep. But like it was the we don't need to
put
have
it on the downside of the landing. What you give up is that ability to come up way short and not have any problems. That's about it.
Yeah, you
got to put it on
to
the
be
landing.
A good rider. Yeah,
Mhm.
you got to be a good rider, and you gotta, you gotta, have the physique to be able to manage a 120 bike through some of the rough stuff that there is out there. I mean, one of our buddies raced the BME on a 140 mil front travel hardtail, single speed. Actually, he raced the BME at Shepherd on that. It's like, so stuff like that gets done. It can be done, but
He came back with full
yeah.
suspension the next year, though, to be fair.
No, it's probably torture. But Sam's strong. He's strong, and I think he likes punishment occasionally. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's this. I think obviously it's the sweetest it's ever been right now. But back then, most people overlooked the Remedy and the Enduro. But back then, those bikes didn't weigh much. Like I had a Remedy that was a 140 29er that weighed. I was under 27 pounds, like 26 and a half pounds or something like that. And the thing is, though, that was back when, cross country bikes were weighing 20 pounds and 21 pounds, and now everything's heavier because it has to be more capable. I mean, there was that same generation of like 2016 to 2020, that was the crossover between people riding big trails on little bikes, and we were breaking a bunch. Like if you were to talk to any dealer, people were breaking chain stays, seat stays. I mean, there was a lot of warranty on frames and rear triangle pieces going out, because that people were riding big trails on little bikes. And so now everything has gotten heavier, and it's carried, through the generations of bikes. But I think that was that was a bike that got overlooked back then that I think was closer to the sweet spot than anybody realized back then. It had modern geometry, comfortable descending geometry, but was lightweight enough, and efficient enough pedaling to be a great all-arounder. But back then it was looked at as an all-mountain bike and wasn't ridden in the Midwest a lot. And so, I think that was probably the advent of it. But instead of that being the Remedy now, that is now just, the fuel, the extra, even the top fuel at this point. You know what I mean? So I think it all started back then in that generation. I think it's just gotten better since then.
By the way, Kyle, I got to hang out with one of your former Remedies yesterday at Shepherd Mountain.
Which one?
29-pound, still going strong. Chad Suterer was there. Along with a lot of other veterans. Thank you, veterans. I went down and he showed up and he still has your, 2019 model, 18, 19?
Yeah,
he
18, 19, the black.
Pounds and other than Shepherd Mountain, I mean, that is a fun bike to ride anywhere.
It's a great bike. It was a great bike.
I raced, I guess it was the next one you got after that in a cross country race. It was fine. Like, riding my Trance has really opened my eyes, because even in the high mode, I got so used to it in the high mode, the most cross country I could get it, that I was still comfortable going high speed. And it seems like we've reached a point in mountain biking where, as far as geometry goes, we're there. If you've got a modern bike, Transition just came out with the new Sentinel, and they went steeper on the head tube angle. We've reached the limit, and now it's coming back a little. And you guys kept bringing up tires. When I had my Specialized Enduro and I did not have a short travel bike, the difference that tires make cannot be overstated. Now, I had a whole wheel set I would swap really fast, so I didn't actually have to change tires. But I could put on, I had a set of Bontrager carbon wheels with some Vittoria Sierras or something on there, and I could absolutely go fly on that big Enduro on cross-country trails. That a Specialized Enduro with those tires would be faster up the hill than my giant Trance with downhill tires on. Like, there's
right.
If you've got a modern bike and you're like, I can't really afford another bike, either a cheap wheel set, or if you're like me and you make your own tire sealant, if you're going to go into an extended period where it's like, I'm going to go put in miles, just going to go ride mile after mile, swap the tires and you'll probably be pretty happy with what you've got, regardless of how much travel it has. They all pedal pretty well these days. It's all good.
Yeah, no, that's real too, because that's exactly how I have my wife's bike set up. So she's on a Giuliana Rubion. And the Rubion is essentially the women's version of the Bronson. So it's a 150, 160 mullet bike. But she had a hard time keeping pace on the trail. I love my wife. She's not a high effort rider. Like, she doesn't go in to go hurt herself, right? She doesn't go do max heart rate rides. But because of that, we're all riding. I mean, Connor right now is riding fast, and he has no problem running max heart rate as long as, longer than I can do it. So when we go ride, though, she had a hard time keeping pace. And so all I did was just swap her over to a modern cross-country race tire setup with like an XO casing. So she's got XO casing, Forecaster, and Recon Race, I think is how she's set up. And she doesn't push the tires to needing more traction, but she's on a 150, 160 bike with good geometry and keeps up fine now. And they turn over great, they spin great, they roll great. Like, she gets all the benefits and none of the downside because she's not pushing the bike hard enough to need more traction anyway. So it's a sweet spot for her.
Ryan keeps trying to jump in here and say something. What do you need, Ryan?
Well, I just think we need to be cautious, us three, on our podcast, saying we were flying on a cross country trail. All right. So, all right. All three of us need to be cautious on that.
Down the hills, Ryan. Down the hills.
I think we've seen what flying. Oh yeah. Okay, down the hills. Well, we need to specify that, okay, because we've seen what flying on a cross country trail really is, and it's
fair point. Yes, we're not riding Jimmy Smith levels the entire time. I 100% agree with that. When I say flying, I just mean letting off the brakes and just letting it go and letting the trail take you, and only braking when absolutely necessary because a switchback is coming. Because in my defense, Ryan, I have also seen what not flying on the cross-country trail looks like, and it is very significant difference. The spectrum is quite wide on how fast or slow people are willing to go.
Man, I did a ride. So I did a ride a few weeks back with one of my buddies, and he hasn't been on a bike in a long time. And so I thought to myself, like, I'll ride my Bronson. Like he'll be on his, normal trail bike. He's got an older Fuel EX, but it's, he's got somewhere split between cross country and trail tires, but he hasn't ridden it forever. I don't even think it was maybe his first or second mountain bike ride of the year. We decided to ride Lost Valley, which is, a 10-mile cross country loop. And I was like, I'll ride my Bronson. I'll be fine. And I had the hardest time keeping up with him, and he's not fit. He's not, he's fat. He can be fast. He's very fast on a dirt bike, but not in prime fitness level. And I could not believe at how slow that Bronson felt with double down max grips. And I hated it. It was exhausting and miserable to keep that bike spinning over on anything that wasn't pointed down. And then I did that same ride yesterday again on my Epic with, cross country tires on it. And it was so much more fun, like just so much more fun, so much faster. And it's frustrating how you can't have the best of both worlds with tires. It is either you have fast tires or you have slow, durable tires. You don't get
just
both.
Described my last two night ride experiences with Silent Bryce, because I was on my Rain with my big downhill tires and all of that. And I thought I'll be fine because I just did the Epic and Bryce hasn't ridden 50 miles this whole year. And turns out, no, I was not fine. And it was I couldn't keep up with him. Part of that is he has really good outbound lights on his helmet and his bars. And I just have an outbound on my bars and it's a decent light. At the time, it was a great light motion something or other on my helmet. But compared to those outbound lights, he can see much better. Didn't really matter, though, because even up the hills, I couldn't keep up. And somehow we have made yet another podcast about tires. So that's a real problem for us. We're going to change topics. Kyle, you might not be prepared for this. Now, I already know what I'm getting, but we'll just consider this retrospect. We're getting into the Christmas season, and I'm curious if you guys have one or two very specific Christmas bike-related wish list items. I do have one. I'm going to get it. It's already been ordered. It's probably at the shop already, but I am finally shelling out the money to get a smart trainer. So I'm getting the Wahoo Zwift one, like the single cog thing they just came out with, because it looks like, one, it's relatively inexpensive compared to other smart trainers. And two, it looks like by far the easiest to get set up and get going. It's got one cog. It works with about any drivetrain that you could possibly have. It seems like it's going to be very easy to just get it set up and start Zwifting or whatever this winter, because I cannot do another winter on the dumb trainers trying to just watch TV shows while I'm pedaling, because a half an hour on one of those feels like 4 or 5 hours on a real trail. I would rather do the BT Epic all over again than sit on one of those trainers in my basement, just dialing in the little knob and being like, I guess that's enough resistance. It's mind numbing. I can't do it. I cannot do it again.
Oh, that's good.
So that's my number one.
That's good, Clinton.
And it's coming.
Yeah, already getting it. So I guess, when we talk about us, a lot of times it's like, what are we treating ourselves for Christmas for, right? Like, so for me, a couple things that I'm looking at. One, I'm testing a rocker plate for my trainer. Last year I spent a ton of time on the trainer, and I do think it was beneficial, and I plan on spending more this year. And so a friend let me borrow his rocker to see if I like it. And it's noticeable in that it provides quite a bit more comfort, especially downstairs. With a standard trainer that's just sitting on the ground, you don't get the side-to-side rock like you get when you're riding outside, the natural rock side-to-side. And with this rocker plate, that's what I've noticed in 2 rides on it, is that I get that side-to-side, so I'm not getting as much, let's just say, pain and irritation. More and longer rides on it through this winter when the weather's terrible. So that's one thing. And then I'm looking at a new bag. Thule makes a really nice gear bag. And then I got my dad for his birthday a month or so ago. Wild Horn Outfitters makes a really cool bag as well. And I got him that. So I'm just looking at a new bag, just to kind of have all my gear with me all the time, make sure I don't forget stuff, those sort of things.
Yeah, every year I think to myself, this is going to be the year that I fork out for the trainer, because every year, actually last year I don't even think I did because I knew I wasn't doing the BT, but every year up until last year for the past 5 years, I'll set up my dumb trainer, I lock my bike into it, and then I hang clothes on it for the entire winter outside of 1 or 2 rides. And I have squirrel brain, and no matter there's no amount of Parks and Rec or The Office episodes or Marvel movies that I can do and enjoy sitting on the stupid dumb trainer and just pedaling and making myself hurt. It doesn't. I don't have a level of satisfaction. I last year or 2 years ago I bought sensors for it, so I had a cadence sensor, I had a speed sensor, and was logging rides with my Garmin watch and hoping that that would provide some level of entertainment for me to know mileage. And it didn't. I just didn't care, and I didn't do it. So I am nervous about spending the money on a nice smart trainer, because the thing is I'd have to do a nice one. Otherwise, I just won't use it. And I'm still even nervous about doing a nice one because I don't know if I can talk myself into doing it either way. The other side of it too is there's no room in my basement for anything. We're out of cubic space, period. But so that's always in the back of my head as on a Christmas list. And so I'm going to probably have to do some research and figure out whether or not that'll find a way to make it onto a Christmas list. That would have to be every person that's getting me a gift next year or this year goes in on getting me that trainer, because they're so expensive. So it'd have to be
that's exactly what I told my family is just donate toward the trainer, please.
That's it. It'll have to be a conglomerate of effort between my parents, my in-laws, and my wife on getting that thing done. And so I don't know, maybe this is the year that I do that. My go-to is tools. I love having a stocked bike shop in my basement that has anything and everything that I need to maintain all of our bikes that we have. And so there's always a list of tools. Some of them are expensive, some of them are not. But that's usually what ends up making my bike Christmas list every year, is just here's a list of 5 park tools that I need and a couple Pedro's tools that I need. Go grab them from Granada. And so that's that. I don't have that list put together yet, but that'll probably be and ends up being a good portion of it, I imagine. Yeah,
tools are a great one. I actually seen it was interesting, a dirt bike video of them busting the headset races out on a dirt bike with a park tool, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have one of those, and I literally put one in my Amazon list.
Yep.
So yep. Yeah.
No, that's all stuff too that like I don't really want to spend $50 on that, but you know what? Somebody's gonna get me a gift. I would love to receive that, right?
Yeah.
So here's something for our listeners. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you are the mountain biker, so you know these things. But if there's someone listening that has a mountain biker in their life and they're thinking about what could I get the person that's not too expensive, just like little things that every mountain biker can use, here's a couple suggestions. One thing I would say is if you have a mountain biker in your life that wears Crank Brothers shoes and pedals, they're using cleats, get them a pack of brass replacement cleats. You can even get the aftermarket knockoff ones. They work just fine. I've used them. They're fine. They feel barely any different, but that's a relatively cheap item, depending on whether or not you want to spend $25 for the real ones or $12 for the knockoffs. Works either way. Another thing is find out what kind of brake pads your buddy runs, what kind of brakes they have. Set of brake pads, always good. Little wear items like that. To me, those are just two things that are pretty cheap. The other thing, underrated, that's also very cheap is a pack of color, like depending on what color accents they have on their bike. The bolts that hold in your disc, the little 6 bolts that go in your brake rotor, they're really cheap. I got two sets of red ones for my Trance because I have some red accents here and there. Just little things like that, kind of zhuzh it up, but you're not going to have to go spend $100 or more. So
a couple things that I like there's things that are like ridiculously expensive, but like are almost like essential. Like everybody has like preferences on different things, right? So I always love when I get consumables like chamois butter or you know, shoot a thing of tire sealant or
nutrition.
or nutrition. Yeah, like you look at that stuff and you're like, gosh, I can't believe I'm spending the money, but you always spend it. So when I get that stuff, I'm like, I'm going to use it. It's not something you're going to buy me that it's going to sit on a shelf and I'm never going to use. I'm going to use that stuff. So like, that's always good. One thing I get every year is I'm a diva with my socks. Like I love Swiftwick socks and they're $15 to $20 a pair. Now they're lifetime warranty, which is nice. But like, I always tell my mom, I'm like, get me a pair or two of Swiftwick socks, you know? So she's like, I can't believe I'm getting you socks. I always got you socks when you were a kid and you complained about it. Now you want socks, like, you know? But like, if you have stuff like that, like I always tell my mom, I'm like, hey, at least you know it's going to get used, you know? So.
No, yeah. After the age of 25, socks become an essential part of Christmas listing for a guy. If you're over the age of 25 and you're a guy, you need to be getting socks for Christmas.
Yeah, it's funny how when we were kids, like we get a pack of socks, we're like, what the heck? I wanted a toy car. now we ask for socks.
I was waving goodbye to us, everybody. So we'll see you later, Kyle. We're about to wrap this up anyway. Somehow we ended up talking about tires for 15 minutes. I apologize. We can't help ourselves. Okay, it's an addiction.
Cheers, y'all. Good luck, Klint. See ya.
Ryan, do you have anything else, or should we just go ahead and finish this up here as well?
No, I think that's a good podcast. I look forward to how bro are you, and I also look forward to when you do get your trainer, like a review after you've done some rides on it and what you're finding you like, what you're finding you don't like, maybe what you changed in your setup from day one to a couple rides in and stuff like that. I think that'll be a fun topic. I think, you know, a lot of mountain bikers probably like, why would you do that? You know, it depends on what your goals are with maybe mountain biking. But for us, like, it's definitely maintaining some fitness. And I think there's a very vast group out there that likes that. And I think they'd like some more input on it. And maybe we can even share on our pages our setup, like a quick video on the Facebook page, like, hey, here's Ryan's setup, here's Clinton's setup, and different stuff. I think that'd be a fun one. So we'll do that in the future too. I thought the new listener ideas was just awesome. It's fun to hear new listeners, and we really appreciate the ideas because we want to do more podcasts. And it's helpful to get ideas on them. I know Caleb Hunter is a friend of ours too. He mentioned even he'd like to come on at some point. And he rides a lot of different trails because he travels a lot. So just fun to get some different perspectives from people. So I think we've been talking internally about upping our podcast game. So hopefully it improves in the future with the quantity and quality and variety of what we've got going on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to I have an extra microphone in my basement. I think I'm just going to keep it in my office just in case this ever happens again. This was kind of a spur of the minute. Hey, we're all available right now. Let's just get Skype going and start talking. So thanks for listening, everybody. I do believe the next podcast will be How Bro Are You Part 2 Revisited. I'm very excited about it. I have sent the original list to Kyle and Ryan. We're probably going to make some updates and rescore ourselves, see if we've gotten more bro or less bro or same bro. I don't know. We're going to find out. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.